The towel dropped from my hands, but I didn't flinch. Her laugh, a dry, hollow chuckle that bounced off the laundry room tiles, lingered like mildew. "You're lucky I even let you touch me." That's what she said. Not in a fight, not in some heated exchange, just casually, like she was commenting on the weather, as if decades of providing, fixing, covering her mistakes, and paying off her credit card messes were some pathetic tribute she tolerated out of politeness. She turned, humming, tossing her blouse into the dryer like nothing had happened. I just watched her. Not angry, not even sad. Something quieter, sharper. I folded the last t-shirt, that old one from the state fair we went to, before the veneers, before the Pilates instructor with the ridiculous name, before she stopped asking how my day was. I folded it with more care than I'd handled her in months, placed it neatly on the stack, and walked out. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. A giggle. Another message. Another little love note from whoever she thought was her escape hatch. Her voice changed when she texted lately. Higher, lighter, like she was 20 again. I used to like that sound. Now it just reminded me that good liars enjoy the setup almost as much as the lie itself. I passed the hall mirror. Sure, I had a few wrinkles. Maybe moved slower than at 40. But I built machines that could carve titanium to half a human hair's width. I led a crew of 20 men who didn't dare miss a measurement. I wasn't some slob begging for affection scraps. But in this house, I was a placeholder. And placeholders don't argue. We execute. Down in my office, I opened the drawer I hadn't touched in months, the one with the small oak box I'd carved myself. It was supposed to hold cufflinks. Instead, it held clarity. I flipped open my laptop. No rush, no drama. Just a man doing what he's always done. Cataloging, protecting, cleaning up someone else's mess. The folder was still there, waiting for the day she smirked at me one time too many. First up, email printouts from her realtor friend, Celeste, about fun weekends in Ridge Hill. Dates that matched perfectly with the training retreats she claimed to be attending. One even had a rental car receipt in her name, with a second driver listed. Not me. Then the texts. I'd synced her phone to the family iPad 6 months ago. She never noticed. Thought it was just for streaming Netflix in the guest room. One thread stuck out. Her, "Can't wait to see you outside the sheets for once LOL." Him, thumbs up and a mirror selfie, shirtless, in the bathroom of a hotel I recognized instantly. The Burstone. Betrayal has a scent. That place always smelled like lavender and stale desperation. By the time she came downstairs later, makeup off, wearing that smug little robe she put on when she wanted to play the affectionate wife, I'd already decided. "You didn't say goodnight," she said, fake concern dripping from her voice. "I figured you were tired of touching me." I replied, smiling. She blinked, muttered something about me being dramatic, and went upstairs. I stayed in the office, lit only by the desk lamp, sliding that oak box to the center of the desk. It was empty, but not for long. The house went quiet around 11:17 p.m. Vanessa was already in bed, tablet sliding off her chest, some real estate podcast mumbling market trends she didn't understand without her assistant explaining them. Her face twitched in sleep, maybe dreaming she was still the prize she imagined herself to be. I stood in the hallway for a while, listening to her soft snores and the occasional ding of a new message from the contact in the industry. Then I turned back into the office. No lights. Just me, the desk lamp, and that oak box. I printed the emails first, Celeste's little weekend getaways that never made it to our joint account statements. Each one sorted by date, because chronology matters when you're about to dismantle someone's sense of safety. Then I pulled out the iPad. Still unlocked. She'd never noticed the backup sync was on. To her, tech was just wires and chargers. To me, it was leverage. I didn't rush. She'd call me slow for years. "You move like you're buffering," she once joked in front of friends. They laughed. I smiled. Because slowness isn't weakness, it's precision. Screenshot after screenshot. Lunch dates she claimed were board meetings. Location tags still attached. Her, "I needed that last night. Let's do a quick lunch before I head home." Timestamp. 1:42 p.m., the same time she told me she was stuck in a budget review. Him, a contractor we once hired to fix the deck. I'd offered him a beer. He'd thank me like a son. Scrolling further, I found the one that stuck like a splinter. Her, "He's nice but dull." A placeholder. My life started late. Dull. Placeholder. My knuckles whitened against the desk, but only for a second. I breathed out, clicked save, and dropped everything into a folder labeled June Justice. One flash drive, one encrypted cloud backup, one copy on a drive in my safe. She thought I didn't check receipts. She was right. I checked patterns. And people like her always left fingerprints. By the time I shut the laptop, the oak box had its first occupant, a neat stack of dates, names, and screenshots. I closed the lid, polished the brass hinges with my thumb, and smiled. Because in chess, you don't need to move fast. You just need to make sure every piece is where you want it when the queen thinks she's untouchable. The next morning, Vanessa floated into the kitchen in yoga pants and a messy bun, humming some pop song from her still relevant playlist. She poured coffee like she hadn't spent the last 3 months treating me like a placeholder in my own house. "Morning," she said, taking a seat at the counter. "Big day." "Always," I replied, sipping mine. "Got a few things to finalize." "Work?" she asked, not really listening. "Sort of," I said. "You?" "Oh, just a showing in Ridge Hill." She smiled without looking at me, the kind of smile people practice in mirrors before job interviews. "Ridge Hill, huh?" I said, flipping open the paper. "Nice area. Great for weekend retreats." She froze for half a second, not enough for an untrained eye to notice, but I saw it. That little hitch, like a gear slipping. Then she went back to scrolling her phone. I let it sit. No confrontation, no questions. Just bait. The rest of the week, I dropped breadcrumbs. "Hey, you know the Burstone Hotel? Thought I'd check it out. Might book a night." "Funny, I saw your friend Celeste at the gas station. She said you two were overdue for another Ridge Hill trip. You should wear that white blouse again. The one from your Tuesday dinners." Each time, I caught the faintest flicker, a tightening around the eyes, a subtle shift in posture. But she never asked me what I meant, which told me everything. She wasn't just lying, she was calculating. Friday night, she waltzed in late, smelling faintly of lavender and stale wine. "Long day?" I asked. "MHM," she said, kicking off her heels. "Networking dinner. You'd have been bored." I smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe I'd have enjoyed the show." She tilted her head, narrowed her eyes just slightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm learning to appreciate performances," I said, sipping my drink. "And you, Vanessa, are one hell of an actress." She didn't reply, just went upstairs, which was fine, because the next act was mine. Saturday morning, I woke up before her. Not unusual. She's never been a morning person unless brunch reservations or a yoga retreat were involved. I made coffee, read the news, and waited for the sound of her bare feet on the hardwood. Instead, I heard the front door unlock. I stepped to the hallway just in time to see her slip inside wearing a hoodie that wasn't hers. Not mine either. She froze for a fraction of a second when she saw me. "Morning," I said, sipping my mug like we weren't in the middle of a silent war. "Morning," she replied, tugging the hoodie tighter. "Went for a walk." At 6:30 a.m.? In Ridge Hill. Her eyes flickered, just a micro-expression, but enough to confirm the obvious. She brushed past me and headed for the stairs. I didn't stop her. I didn't ask for details. I just noted the time, the hoodie, and the faint smell of hotel soap that followed her. By noon, she was gone again, client lunch, and I had the house to myself. Perfect. I unlocked the safe in my office and pulled out the oak box. The folder inside was already thick with receipts, screenshots, and time-stamped photos I'd quietly taken of her comings and goings. But today, I was adding something new. I had logged into our shared credit card account and noticed a charge from a boutique in Ridge Hill, lingerie. Not her style, not her size. The receipt was now printed, dated, and filed. Next, I opened my private email account, the one she didn't know about. Sitting in my drafts folder was a message addressed to 3 recipients. Our joint financial advisor, my lawyer, Celeste, her realtor friend. The subject line, Vanessa's extracurriculars. Inside was a polite, factual breakdown of every piece of evidence so far. No emotion, no speculation, just dates, locations, amounts, and screenshots. A prosecutor's dream. I wasn't sending it yet. This was the knife I'd keep in my boot until the moment she thought she'd won. At 3:17 p.m., Vanessa called from her lunch. "Hey, can you grab some wine for tonight? Celeste might come over." "Sure," I said. "What's the occasion?" "Oh, nothing. Just catching up." "Great," I replied. "Tell her I'm looking forward to Ridge Hill stories." She didn't respond. Just hung up. By 5 p.m., I'd returned from the store and poured myself a whiskey. She came home with Celeste in tow, both smiling a little too brightly, like high schoolers who think the teacher doesn't notice they've been passing notes all class. I stayed polite, made small talk, listened as they discussed property listings I knew didn't exist. Every now and then, I'd glance at Vanessa and say something like, "That sounds like the Burstones' dining room," or "Funny, that date sounds familiar." I wasn't looking for a confession. I was watching her squirm. Around 9 p.m., Celeste left. Vanessa began clearing glasses from the counter. "You were quiet tonight," she said. "Just listening," I replied. "To what?" "To the way you tell a story." She smirked, feigning ignorance. And, and you're consistent," I said. "You never miss a beat, even when you're lying." The smirk faltered for just a second before she turned away. "You're paranoid." I let that hang in the air. "You might be right. Or maybe I just see the patterns." She set the last glass in the sink without looking at me and went upstairs. The next morning, my plan kicked into gear. I took the flash drive labeled June Justice to my office downtown. Using my work scanner, which she couldn't access, I digitized everything again, uploaded it to 2 encrypted clouds, and mailed a copy to my lawyer. Then I made a phone call. "Hi, I'm looking to book a small event at the Burstone Hotel," I told the manager. "Private room, maybe 20 guests. And I'll need access to the security footage from the last 3 months for creative purposes." Money talks. A generous location fee secured exactly what I needed. Video clips of Vanessa entering and leaving the hotel with her debt contractor boyfriend, timestamped right down to the minute she told me she was working late. By the time I got home, the clips were downloading. Vanessa was on the couch when I walked in, scrolling through her phone. "How was your day?" she asked. "Productive," I said. "Yours?" "Oh, errands. Pilates. Grocery store." "Grocery store, huh?" I tossed her the receipt from the lingerie boutique. Her face went pale, then flushed. "You went through my stuff?" "No," I said. "Our stuff. We share the account, remember?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "It was a gift." "For who?" "A friend." "Name?" She grabbed her phone and stood. "You're insane." "Possibly," I said, leaning back in my chair. "But I'm also patient." She stomped upstairs. That night, I emailed a single still frame from the Burstone footage to my private account. Her and the contractor, arms around each other, exiting the lobby. Subject line, Act 1. I didn't send it to her. I didn't need to. The real game was psychological. I wanted her to feel the ground shift beneath her feet without knowing where the cracks were. Monday morning, I left for work early, stopping at a print shop on the way. I had the still frame blown up to poster size and mounted on a stiff board. On the back, I wrote in black marker, "Chronology matters." I stored it in my office closet. For now. By midweek, Vanessa's energy had changed. She was more cautious, more attentive. She made dinner twice, something she hadn't done in months. She asked about my day, even laughed at a couple of my jokes. It would have been charming if I didn't know it was just reconnaissance, her way of trying to figure out what I knew. And that was fine. Let her think she was gaining ground. The more she tried to manipulate the board, the more pieces she left unguarded. Friday night, I poured us each a glass of wine. "To us," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "To us. Why not?" I clinked her glass. "It's been an interesting month." She smiled warily. "You're in a good mood." "I am," I said. "Things are falling into place." "Work? Everything," I replied. We drank in silence for a moment. She broke first. "Logan, are we okay?" I studied her over the rim of my glass. "We're exactly where we need to be." She didn't know it, but she just agreed to her own checkmate. Because my first move wasn't the evidence, or the hotel footage, or even the financial preparations. It was letting her believe she still had control. And that belief was going to be the rope she tied around her own neck. The following Monday, I began my workday the same way I had for the last 12 years. Coffee in the travel mug, jacket over the chair, laptop open before the rest of the team even arrived. But I wasn't really working. I was running a different kind of project plan, one Vanessa would never see coming. Step 1 was easy. Start moving our joint assets into accounts she didn't have access to. Not in one dramatic sweep. That's how amateurs get caught. No, I did it in small, irregular transfers. A few thousand here, a stock sale there, each justified by believable market adjustments or investment opportunities. I even left a few accounts untouched to make the books look normal. The goal wasn't to drain everything. Not yet, but to make sure that when the bottom dropped out, my landing was soft and hers was concrete. That evening, Vanessa was all charm. She'd made pasta from scratch, she said, and opened a bottle of wine she'd been saving. I sat at the table, watching her move around the kitchen like a woman who'd just remembered she was married. "You're quiet," she said, setting my plate down. "Just tired," I replied. "Long day. You should take a break," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "We should take a trip. Somewhere nice." "Ridge Hill nice?" I asked deadpan. Her fork paused mid-spin. Then she laughed, too loud, too quickly. "God, are we still on that? You're obsessed." I smiled faintly. "Patterns, Vanessa. I just like recognizing them." She changed the subject. 2 days later, I made my second move. Vanessa prided herself on her social media. Curated shots of wine glasses, sunsets, and houses she was showing that I knew she had no listings for. I had a burner account, one she didn't know was mine, with a decent following built up from harmless comments and the occasional viral post about home renovation tips. From that account, I started sprinkling in very specific comments under her photos. "Looks like the Burstone lobby. Such a beautiful spot for a date. That deck in the background looks familiar. Is that your contractor friend?" Never direct accusations, just enough for people to wonder. By the end of the week, she'd made her profile private, which told me it was working. The third move was more personal. One morning, I left for work as usual, but doubled back 20 minutes later, parking 2 streets over. I watched her car pull out at 9:12 a.m., gym bag in the passenger seat, hair done in a way that wasn't for Pilates. I followed. Not closely, just enough to keep her in sight. She didn't go to the gym. She drove straight to the Burstone. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. The security feed I'd already secured would cover that. But I noted the time. 9:37 a.m. arrival, 12:48 p.m. departure. Long enough for lunch, longer for a matinee. That afternoon, I placed an anonymous call to the brokerage office where she worked. I knew the receptionist. We'd been at the same charity dinner 2 years ago. I disguised my voice, just enough to make it unrecognizable. "Hi, I'm calling about Vanessa Morgan. I thought you should know she's been meeting clients at the Burstone during business hours." A small seed, one that would grow on its own. By Friday, the air in the house had shifted. She was on edge, more phone calls taken in the garage, more sudden changes in plans. She even asked me, casually, if I'd noticed anything strange at work lately. I told her no, which was technically true. The strange things weren't happening at work. That night, we went to dinner. She insisted. A fresh start, she called it. Halfway through the meal, she reached across the table and touched my hand. "Logan, we've had our ups and downs, but I think we can get through this." I didn't pull away. "Through what?" "You know, the rough patch." "Vanessa, a rough patch is when you forget an anniversary or argue about money. This is an avalanche. The trick isn't surviving it. The trick is making sure you're not buried in the debris." She frowned. "Why do you talk like that? Like everything's a chess match." "Because," I said, taking a sip of wine, "it is." The next morning, I set the biggest piece yet. I called her contractor boyfriend. His number was easy to find. It was on the invoice from when he fixed our deck. "Hey, it's Logan," I said. Dead silence for a moment. Then, hey man. "What's up?" "Nothing much. Just wondering if you're available for some more work around the house." A pause. I don't think Vanessa." "Vanessa doesn't need to know." I cut in. "I was thinking we could go over the plans, maybe at the Burstone." Another pause. Then the sound of him exhaling hard. "Look, I don't know what you think you." "Oh, I'm not thinking," I said. "I know. And here's the fun part. I'm not angry at you. I'm not even going to warn you. I'm just letting you know, in advance, that you're about to be part of something you don't understand." I hung up. That call wasn't for information. It was for pressure. If Vanessa started getting nervous calls from him, she'd make mistakes. And mistakes were what I was counting on. Sure enough, 2 nights later, she came into the living room while I was reading. "Have you talked to anyone lately?" she asked, standing just far enough away to look casual. "Plenty of people," I said. "Why?" "No reason. Just wondering." She went upstairs. I marked it in my notes. Subject is rattled. My final move that week was simple but devastating. I mailed an unmarked envelope to her office. Inside, a single still from the Burstone footage. No note, no explanation. The next day, she came home early, said she wasn't feeling well. I didn't ask why. I didn't have to. Because in chess, you don't just go after the queen. You control the board until she has nowhere left to move. And now? She was running out of squares. Vanessa spent the next week moving like a cat that hears the sound of its own carrier. Restless, distracted, snapping at shadows. Every time her phone buzzed, she'd flinch. Every time I walked into the room, she'd tuck the screen down or angle it away. I didn't mention it. I didn't need to. In chess, sometimes you just watch your opponent burn their own clock. Thursday night, she surprised me with a "let's talk" invitation. She'd set the dining table, candles, wine glasses, actual cloth napkins. I sat down. She didn't waste time. "Logan, we've been off lately. I feel like we're losing each other." I studied her. "Lately?" She pressed her lips together, ignoring the jab. "I want to fix this." "Fix what?" "Us." The word hung there between us. "You don't fix a house by painting over the mold," I said finally. "You tear out the rot." Her shoulders stiffened. "You make it sound like I'm the problem." I set my glass down. "Vanessa, the only thing you and I agree on right now is that there is a problem. But you think it's a leak in the roof. I know it's a sinkhole under the foundation." She swallowed, eyes narrowing. "You've been talking to someone." "I've been watching," I corrected. "And listening. And documenting." Her fork clinked against her plate. "Documenting. Patterns, Vanessa. You've got a hell of a pattern." For a moment, she looked like she might challenge me, but she didn't. She just pushed her food around her plate and said nothing for the rest of the meal. Friday morning, I set the next stage in motion. I called our financial advisor, pretending to confirm details about an investment account. After a couple of routine questions, I dropped it casually. "By the way, can we make sure Vanessa doesn't have withdrawal privileges on the primary account? Just a precaution. She's traveling a lot lately." "Of course," he said, making a note. "Anything I should know?" "Nothing urgent," I said. "Just moving pieces into place." That afternoon, I walked into her office unannounced. I told the receptionist I was taking my wife to lunch, and she waved me through. Vanessa looked up from her desk, startled. "Logan, what are you doing here?" "Thought I'd surprise you," I said, leaning against the doorframe. Her eyes flicked to her computer screen, just for a second, but enough. She minimized something a little too quickly. I strolled around the desk, glancing at the screen before she could close the laptop. It was an email draft addressed to her contractor boyfriend. The subject line read, "We need to talk before he." She slammed the laptop shut. "Privacy, Logan." "Sure," I said, straightening. "You'll get plenty of that soon." Saturday morning, I sent her a text while she was upstairs getting ready for Pilates. "Me, we should have dinner tonight." "Big news." "Her, good or bad?" "Me, depends who you ask." She didn't reply. That night, I booked a private booth at a quiet steakhouse, the same place we'd celebrated our 10th anniversary. I made sure the waiter knew to keep the wine flowing. When she arrived, she was dressed to kill, the kind of effort she hadn't made for me in months, which told me she thought this was her chance to get control of the narrative. We ordered, chatted about nothing for a while. I let her relax. Then I slid a plain manila envelope across the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Act 2, I said. She opened it and pulled out 3 8x10 stills from the Burstone security footage. Her smile didn't fade instantly. It was more like watching ice melt. "Logan, this is time-stamped. Filed. Backed up," I said, sipping my drink. She tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "No explanations tonight. No lies. Just know that I've been patient. And when I stop being patient, this envelope will have a lot more friends." Her jaw worked. "What do you want?" "I want," I said slowly, "to see how you play when you're out of time." The next morning, she was up early, pacing the kitchen, making calls in a hushed voice. She didn't know I'd installed a small recorder in the air vent months ago. I played it back later. "Vanessa, he knows. I don't know how much, but enough. You need to lay low. Unknown male. We'll figure it out. Does he have proof?" "Vanessa, yes. And I think he's setting me up for something." "Smart girl. A little late, but smart." Monday, I tightened the noose. I called her broker's managing partner, an old acquaintance who owed me a favor from a land deal years back. "I think you should know," I told him. "Vanessa's been conducting some very personal meetings during office hours at the Burstone. Wouldn't want clients to get the wrong idea about the firm's standards." He thanked me for the heads up and promised to look into it immediately. By Wednesday, she was frantic. She called me twice at work, unusual, and asked if we could just talk. That night, She sat across from me on the couch, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. What's your endgame, Logan? I smiled faintly. Endgame's a chess term, Vanessa. We're not there yet. Her eyes narrowed. You think you can destroy me? I think, I said. You've already done most of the work yourself. I'm just adding lighting so everyone can see it. She stood abruptly and left the room. Thursday, I received an email from an unknown address. If you don't stop whatever you're doing to Vanessa, you'll regret it. No name, no signature, but the wording was sloppy. Amateur. It had her contractor's fingerprints all over it. I printed it, filed it, and added it to the oak box. That weekend, I set the final trap. I told Vanessa I'd be out of town overnight for a work conference. I wasn't. I parked 2 streets away again and waited. At 8:46 p.m., a car pulled into our driveway, contractor's truck. He went inside. Lights went off upstairs 10 minutes later. I let the clock run until 6:02 a.m., then walked right up to the front door and unlocked it. Vanessa came down the stairs in a robe, eyes widening when she saw me. Logan, you're home early. I nodded toward the kitchen. Go make coffee. We've got a busy day. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the next 48 hours were going to change everything. Because when you corner the queen, you don't rush the final move. You make her realize she's been playing the wrong game entirely. Vanessa stood at the counter, fussing with the coffee maker like it was suddenly a fragile piece of art. The contractor was gone. His truck had slipped away before I walked in, but his presence still lingered. Her hair was still damp from a shower she'd taken just minutes before I arrived. I sat at the table. Sit down, I told her. She did, arms crossed, eyes darting anywhere but at me. You're worried about the footage, I began. You should be, but that's not the part you should fear most. Her jaw tightened. What do you mean? I said, the footage is just proof. The real damage? That comes from how I use it. Her lip curled. You wouldn't ruin me. Vanessa, I said softly, you've been ruining yourself for months. I'm just the archivist. That morning, I called my lawyer and asked him to file the divorce paperwork. Clean. Aggressive. We'd already gone over the plan weeks ago. This was just pulling the trigger. Then I called our bank to transfer the last of my personal funds out of reach. Not hers. Mine. But I made sure it looked like the accounts were still flush. A little psychological comfort before the floor vanished under her. By afternoon, I was at the print shop again. I had the stills from the Burstone footage turned into high-quality postcards, 100 of them. No captions, no return address. Just Vanessa, time-stamped, leaving the hotel with her boyfriend. That evening, while she took a bath, I drove around town, slipping them into the mail slots of her colleagues, her clients, and a few of her family members. Not enough to cause a public scandal yet, just enough to create whispers. Whispers grow faster than you think. When I got home, she was in the living room, glass of wine in hand. Where were you? She asked. Out, I said. Where were you last night? Her eyes narrowed. We're done with this conversation. I smiled faintly. Not yet. By Monday, she was jumpy. Her phone didn't stop buzzing. I could tell from her tone that she was trying to manage misunderstandings with coworkers. That night, she cornered me in the kitchen. Someone sending pictures of me to people I work with. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Who would do such a thing? Her voice went sharp. This is your doing. Prove it, I said. She stared at me like she wanted to claw my face. But the thing about playing clean, at least on paper, is that there's nothing to grab onto. 2 days later, the managing partner at her brokerage called me. Logan, I'm sorry to involve you, but Vanessa's been under review for personal conduct. You should be aware. I appreciate the heads up, I said. I hope she can clear it up. I knew she couldn't. The contractor wasn't faring much better. I'd slipped one of the postcards into an envelope with the words, "Does your wife know?" and mailed it to his home. His girlfriend, turns out he wasn't single, threw him out the same week. Vanessa came home late that Friday, pale and furious. You've destroyed my relationship, she spat. I sipped my drink. Which one? The following week was a study in disintegration. She stopped going to work. She barely ate. Every phone call she made was hushed, urgent. Then came the day she tried to flip the board. I've spoken to a lawyer, she told me over breakfast. I want the house, the car, and half of your retirement. I almost laughed. Vanessa, you'll get what's fair. And what's fair is after the court sees the evidence, you walk away with what you came in with, nothing I earned. You can't prove. Stop. I slid the oak box onto the table and opened it. Inside, neatly organized folders, USB drives, printed emails, bank statements, postcards. She stared at it. Her hands trembled. "You've been collecting." "For months," I said. "Every lie, every hotel, every dollar you spent on him instead of our bills. Even the text where you called me a placeholder." Her face crumpled for the first time. Not in regret. In recognition that the game was already over. 2 weeks later, the court hearing was brief. My lawyer presented the evidence, all neatly packaged. Her lawyer, clearly blindsided, requested a recess that wasn't granted. By the end of the hour, I had the house, my retirement intact, and a court order barring her from accessing my accounts. As we left the courthouse, she caught up to me on the steps. "You've ruined me," she hissed. I turned to her. "No, Vanessa, I let you ruin yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it." That evening, I stood in my office, looking at the now empty oak box. I'd burned every last piece of evidence. Not out of forgiveness, out of finality. Because the best revenge isn't just winning. It's walking away knowing they'll spend the rest of their life wondering how they lost. And Vanessa? She'll wonder every single day.